area?
No, it's inside.
What?
Inside.
Zayit, okay. Okay, so
We're on page 16, so?
yeah, we're on page Perek Daled.
16 on the top right corner.
This chapter and the next chapter in Tanya
Let's see. It doesn't have
are,
numbers, different numbers. What's the number?
and the bottom page is 18.
Bottom says 18. Like this.
They're focusing on the special achievement when we do a mitzvah, we learn Torah. In this chapter, we focus more on the mitzvot, and the next chapter will be on the Torah study. And it talks about the specialty of our thought, speech, and action. Even though we seem that thought, speech, and action are more external part of ourselves, it's the garments of the soul, as opposed to intellect and emotions, but yet they're able to bring us even higher. And this is similar to physical clothing, that the physical clothing are able to bring more honor to the person. And the same with the thought, speech, and action of Torah and mitzvot, that it even if you understand, just understanding a mitzvah or feeling for the mitzvah doesn't get you to the same level as when you actually do the mitzvah. In practical, you physically do it. That makes that special unity with Hashem. Okay, so and we explained that this is like we are being surrounded with the ore, with the godliness. So we're only the second line from the top. V'lachen amru, this is why the sages say in Pirkei Avot, Yafa sha'a achat b'tshuva u'ma'asim tovim ba'olam hazeh mikol chayei olam haba. That one moment of tshuva, of returning to God, u'ma'asim tovim, and doing ma'asim tovim, doing mitzvot ba'olam hazeh, in this world, it's worth more than kol chayei olam haba, than all of the next world. So the way we understand it when we read it, the way the commentaries explain it, before we learn Chassidut and we learn the deeper meaning of it, is that the next world is the place of the reward. And we can't do anything. We can't really accomplish anything. It's too late. This is the Olam HaMaaseh, this is the Ayom La'asotam. This is the time of doing. So once we get to the next world, then we see the fruits of each mitzvah, and we wish we would do one more mitzvah, but we can't do it. It's too late. So what we're going to do? So then it's a time when we realize that one moment in this world is better than the whole next world because we can't do anything there. Okay. Chassidus brings it to a deeper meaning, that whatever revelation that we experience in the next world doesn't come to the level of connection with God that we have when we actually do the mitzvah. So we're going to learn about this right now. Ki olam haba, because what happens in olam haba, in the next world, in paradise? Hu shenehenin miziv hashchina. The Talmud says that when we go into paradise, we have enjoyment from the revelation of the ray of the Shechina, of Hashem's presence. Shehu tanug ha'asaga, which is a great pleasure of grasping God. Ve'i efshar l'shum nivra, afil ma'alyonim, lehasig, ki im ezoram or Hashem. Every creation, it doesn't matter how high he is, all he could grasp is only a ray of God, a ray of the ore of Hashem. This is why it's called the ray of the Shechina. But God Himself, let machshavat tfisa beklal. No thought could grasp Hashem. So in Gan Eden, the way it's grasping, it's like trying to grasp with our minds God. And obviously they're able to understand about God much more than we do, but as long as you're a creation, you're very limited to how much you could grasp of God. The creation can never really understand the Creator. Whatever you understand is only a tiny, a little ray, limited ray of God. God is infinite. and the creation is finite. So our finite will never be able to understand much of the infinite of Hashem. So whatever you understand in Gan Eden is okay. So maybe in this world you have $1 of our 1%. I'm sorry. Like imagine if someone could have $1 or $1,000,000. So the guy who has $1,000,000 is a lot more than the guy who has $1. Because compared to someone who is infinite, the $1,000,000 didn't bring you a step closer. So in Gan Eden we have so much more understanding than in this world. But it's like having $1,000,000 as opposed to $1. But it's still nothing compared to the infinity of God. So even in Gan Eden, it's amazing. But it's after all only a little ray, finite ray of the infinity of God. So, and if we want to have more than that, in other words, this is the greatest thing that we have as Jews, and we say, thank Hashem that He chose us, that we're able to connect with the infinity of God, with the essence of God. And how do we do it? The way to really to have a Hashem Himself, the only way to really grasp the essence of God is through Torah and mitzvot, because Hashem gave us a tool to connect with His infinity through the Torah. Every word of Torah in it is enclosed the essence of God, and every mitzvah has the essence of God. So this is the way we connect to Hashem. So there is an analogy about this. Imagine someone who is very like Einstein, a genius, and he's standing here, and next to him stands a very simple man. And for the big professor, the simple man is insignificant, not because that he is like not respectful to him, but he just doesn't feel any relationship. He's very simple. He barely knows 10 plus 10, and he knows who knows what. And there is no relationship. And then, let's say the professor asked this little man, please give me a cup of water. So that actually created a relationship, because he's able to fulfill the wish of the professor, the simple man, and the professor is connecting with it through this mitzvah, through this commandment with the simple man. So, in a sense, there's no difference what kind of request the professor is asking the simple man. The request, the mitzvah, is actually making a connection between the two. And the same is with us and Hashem at a much higher level. That God is infinite and we're nothing. And what can create the relationship is the actual mitzvah. Now, we understand that this would be true regardless what kind of mitzvah it is. Now, we know the mitzvot are very meaningful, but even if the mitzvah would not have any meaning, and it would just be God asked us to do to put on tefillin, to light the candles with and there's nothing behind it, no spirituality in it, no meaning behind it. That itself would create a relationship, and of course we have a much more than that, because every mitzvah has so much beauty and so much reasoning and so much secrets behind it. So this is the idea of a mitzvah, that it's really a way, like we said the other day, it's like using an email address. You want to connect with someone on the other side of the world, and you have no way to connect with them. And the email address is the email that the person chose to be his email address, is the way to reach him, and that's how you're going to connect with him. And then you could connect with him on different levels, but that creates the very connection, the email address, and that's the mitzvah. The mitzvah is like the connection between us and Hashem. There was once a young man who was studying in yeshiva, and the advantage of the young men learning in yeshiva is that they don't have any worry. They're not married. They don't have children. They don't have any other worries, and they could immerse in themselves in the Torah study and in their spiritual growth. And one of the things that is encouraged in order for a person to strengthen spiritual growth, is by not letting into all his physical desires. But some people take it a little bit to the extreme, and he did. He was really trying to be very spiritual, and he was trying to eat very little and drink very little and sleep very little. He took it too much. And he was like really breaking all these desires and all these, and he became very refined, very spiritual, and unfortunately he became very sick. I think his name was Reb David, and he became very sick, and he was already dying. And before he passed away, he was so upset at himself. He says that all these years of refinement is not worth it if I'm going to miss one day that I could have put on tefillin, that I could have done a mitzvah. So the rabbis who heard what he said before he passed away, they said, what he said is 100% true. But in order to appreciate another day of doing a mitzvah, you have to reach that level of refinement. So he was really on a high level of refinement to appreciate what a mitzvah can do, the special relationship that you have with God, that you have with Hashem through every mitzvah. But so it is important to have this refinement to connect with it, like we spoke about the class before, that this enables us to have the revelation more. Because the more a person is refined, the more he's spiritual, he could have the revelation of the connection. But the connection is the mitzvah. And this is what we just said, Ma'asim Tovim. We explained that the Pirkei Avot says Ma'asim Tovim. Ma'asim Tovim is similar to what we say Avanim Tovot. Precious stones is called Avanim Tovot. So we know that there is two elements to precious stones. There's Avanim, which is the stones. And then precious stones, Tovim, is from the word Me'irim, shiny stones. Like we said about Moshe Rabbeinu, that he was Tov when he was born. He was Tov because he was full of light. So Tov in the Torah could mean or, light. So Ma'asim Tovim means actions, stones that are full of light. Avanim Tovot. So in other words, you could have stones that are covered with mud, and they're very expensive because you know that the precious stone, they will cost $1 million or whatever money it is, because they're very precious. But if they're covered with mud, you can't really see it, and you can't really enjoy it. Once you take off the dirt, it's shiny. And the same with a mitzvah. The mitzvah itself is like this precious stone. But if a person is not refined, and he does the mitzvah, he's still going to have this stone, he's still going to have this amazing connection with Hashem, but it's very hidden. And that's why it's important to have the spiritual aspect of the mitzvah, and the refinement, and the meditation, and all this spiritual aspect of it, because it's giving life to the mitzvah, it's bringing or to the mitzvah. So what we're saying is over here, that in Gan Eden, we just have the or, but we don't have the actual. In other words, imagine the stones are shining, and you can only have the light of the stone, but not the stone itself. So in Gan Eden, we have, in general, whenever we say Olam Haba, the next world, there is two places that are called next world. Next world could mean after a person passes away and his soul is spending time in Gan Eden in paradise. And sometimes a person has to go through a certain, what's called Gehenna, certain cleansing, so he could go into Gan Eden. And there's a story of Acher, of Elisha ben Avuya, who was a great Torah scholar. And unfortunately, he went off the way. And he had a student, Rabbi Meir, who kept on learning from him. And that was an amazing thing, because normally you're not allowed to learn from someone who doesn't have Yiras Shamayim, because you may take from him the wrong things. But Rabbi Meir was on that level that he was able to only to take the good from him. And it's not recommended for anybody to do that, but Rabbi Meir did it. And after Elisha passed away, Rabbi Meir, there was Rabbi, I don't remember what it was. There was something that happened that because of that, Rabbi Meir says that what's happening with Elisha right now is that he's not accepted, not in Gan Eden, not in Gehenna. They don't let him into Gehenna because he learned so much Torah, so they don't let him into El. They don't let him into Gan Eden because he sinned, so he was stuck. So he said, "When I'm gonna pray, and when I go up there, when I'm gonna pass away, I'm gonna pray that he should go into hell, because it's worth it that he should get the refinement, then he will be able to get into Gan Eden, and it's worth it." So when Meir passed away, smoke came out of the grave of Elisha, and that was a sign that he's in hell now. And then Rabbi Yochanan, I think it was, prayed. He said, "When I'm going to," I don't remember exactly what he said, but he said that he's going to pray that it's enough, whatever he got, and he prayed. And then when he passed away, the smoke stopped, and he went into Gan Eden. So the Chassidus brings that story a lot of times because that story shows us what we already know, that Gan Eden is such an amazing that when Hashem takes a neshama through Gehenna, through hell, it's actually for the sake of the neshama, because it should be able to enter Gan Eden. Because in Judaism, there's no such thing of one thing taking away the other thing. If a person learned a lot of Torah and did a lot of mitzvot, they stay, no matter what, no matter how much he sinned. And if they sinned, and so the sins don't take away the averot don't take away the mitzvot, the mitzvot don't take away the averot. They both exist, and the sins and the mitzvot. So this is one experience. But then we have another experience, which is when Mashiach will come, when we have the resurrection of the dead. So, and it's also a reward for the mitzvot that we did. So the question is, what's the difference between the reward that the neshama gets for its work in this world, in paradise, in Gan Eden, and the reward that the neshama, that the soul gets when Mashiach will come in this world? What's the difference? So we know in both places it can be a great revelation of God. But what's the difference, and why over there is the soul without the body, here is the soul with the body? So, so the first thing is that we understand, Chassidus proves that this world, the revelation of God that will be in this world when Mashiach will come. In other words, when Mashiach will come, it says that the world will turn back to its original state, what it was before Adam merchant sinned. Before Adam merchant sinned, this world was much more pure and much greater. It will turn back into those days. And the revelation of God will be greater than Gan Eden. How do we know it? Because all those people in Gan Eden are going to be resurrected. Now, if we know, like let's take for example Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, our forefathers. They're right now in Gan Eden and they're having a great time. They're going to be resurrected. They're going to come back here. Now, if there is better than here, when Mashiach will come, why are they being punished for coming here? So obviously, we understand that the revelation of God that will take place in this world, when Mashiach will come, and we have the third Beit HaMikdash, the third temple, will be even more than the revelation of God in Gan Eden, in paradise. So, and the Chassidus says it's even more than what we think, because there's a Gemara that says, Yelchu Mechayil El Chayil, that every day, it says in the Gemara, Tamidei Chamim En Lahem Menucha, that those who are in Gan Eden, they don't have a rest. They constantly go higher and higher. So if we're talking about Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, our forefathers and our foremothers, who were in Gan Eden for thousands of years, we understand that they are on the highest level possible. And yet, all of that will be nothing compared to what will be when Mashiach will come. So how does that explain? So this actually is very much connected to what we're learning over here. So the answer is that right now, what we said, when we do a mitzvah, the mitzvah has two aspects to it. It has the infinity and the finite. The mitzvah itself connects us with Hashem, which is connects us with the infinity of Hashem, with the Or Ein Sof, which is the greatest thing. But along with the infinity, now that infinite connection with Hashem, that is beyond revelation. That cannot be revealed not to us, not to the neshama in paradise, because even though, again, we said the paradise is much higher than this world, it's still limited. So, and that it says in Kabbalah, that is being saved for us, like in a savings account. And only when Mashiach will come, there will be the greatest miracle, that in this world there will be revelation of the infinity of God, which is the greatest miracle, because we think it's impossible. Okay, so we'll get back to it in a second. So right now, the only thing that could be revealed is the finite, because along with the infinity of the mitzvah, there's also the finite. That is revealed. Now, in this world, we could barely have anything of it. So we get a little bit, like when we do a mitzvah, we make a bracha, Asher Kedeshanu Mitzvotav, because we do get kedusha through the mitzvah on Pana, Neshama, but very little. And on the world, Melech HaOlam, we say, he goes, but most of the finite stays in Gan Eden, and we get it in Gan Eden. But the infinity stays for Mashiach will come. Okay, so okay, that's number one. Now, the finite could be received much better by the neshama than the guf, than the soul, than the body. And that's why in paradise, when we get that revelation of that finite, we get it for the soul without the body, because the soul is a better, receives it better. But when we're talking about the infinite or of Hashem, when Mashiach will come, it's so infinite that the body and soul are the same. It's not like the soul is even closer to the infinity of God. And because the mitzvah was done by the body with the soul, so that revelation will be after resurrection with the body with the soul. So this is in a nutshell this concept. There's obviously much more to discuss over here, but so this is why. Okay, so one more point. What's the difference in a mitzvah and a Torah learning? Okay, Torah Torah has the holiness of God, and mitzvah also has the kedusha of Hashem. The difference is the mitzvah. It's like a sukkah. What's a sukkah? The sukkah is like a hug. Like it says in Kabbalah, the sukkah has to have 2.5 walls, which is like a hug, like when you hug someone, you have 2.5. So that's a mitzvah. It's just surrounding us with the infinite awe of Hashem. That is so infinite, and that's why it's surrounding us. It's beyond us. So in the mitzvah, there's very little finite awe, and that's what it says that there is no reward for the mitzvah in this world because it's infinite. What the Torah, which we're going to learn more about in chapter 5, has the advantage that the godliness is more contracted because it's something we could understand. It's contracted in something that is logical. That's Torah. It's something you understand and it's contracted into your brain. So you are basically taking the aura of Hashem, which is enclosed in this logic that you're learning, and it goes into your brain. So you have the advantage of the aura becomes more finite. So this is difference between will and wisdom. We have willpower and we have wisdom. So think about your body. When you have, what's the difference in willpower and wisdom? Wisdom is in a vessel. It's in the brain. Willpower is infinite. Willpower is everywhere. Willpower, let's say if you want, one of the ways to explain it, imagine you want to move your foot or you want to move your hand. You want to do anything with your body, it's instantly. It happens automatically. That means that the willpower is really surrounding us. Because if it would be anywhere if you ask a person, where is your willpower? You think maybe it's in the brain. Let's say it would be within the brain, then it would take time from the brain to go into the leg. So obviously willpower is something infinite, something above you, something all around you. The mitzvah is the will of Hashem. The Torah, which is the explanation of the mitzvah, is something more finite, more intellectual. So the Gemara says, Ashrei mi sheba lekayim talmudo biyado. The Gemara says that fortunate is the one who goes into paradise and he studied Torah. Why? Because if you only did mitzvah, you don't have what to do in Gan Eden. Because the mitzvah is mostly infinite. It's the will of God. Willpower is more infinite. It's mostly infinity of God when you do a mitzvah. And you can only enjoy from it when Mashiach will come. Now, when a person right now has nothing. But if a person studied Torah and he brought the finite, he's able to bring the finite aura of Hashem into his neshama, so that through studying of Torah, then he's going to be able to enjoy in Gan Eden this finite. Yeah.
Torah is also a mitzvah.
Right. You have two aspects of it, right? Yeah. Okay. So getting back to what we're saying is that the only way to really connect with the infinity of Hashem is by Torah mitzvah. The Oraita b'Kushabrach Kol Achad, as it says in the Zohar, that the Torah and Hashem are one. So the Torah is really, it's the way, it's like you're looking, imagine you want to look at the sun and you can't. So you look with sunglasses. So the light that you're getting through the sunglasses, light of the sun, just that the sunglasses is adjusting it in a way that you'll be able to receive it. So the Torah mitzvah to us it seems very physical, but it's basically contracting. Hashem did a miracle that He took infinity and He contracted it through every word of Torah and through every mitzvah that it's able that we should be able to receive it. And even though the Torah is enclosed in very lowly matters, very physical matters, so we think, how could the physical, you learn Torah, you learn about stories that are physical, Avraham sending Eliezer to find a wife for Rivka. How does this connect in with God? We think this is like not even spiritual, this is so physical. You learn alachot, mitzvot, it's all very physical things, etrog, lulav. How does that connect us with Hashem? It seems that this is like this is like creation. This is not God. This is compared to someone who's hugging the king. Imagine you get the opportunity to hug the king. There's no difference how close you get to the king. If you get a hug from the king, if you're hugging the king, and the king is wearing just a shirt, or he's wearing a shirt and a sweater and a coat, is there any difference in the closeness that you have with the king? It's the same thing. The king is just wearing more clothing, but you have the same level of closeness with the king. So the difference is that Hashem, in order to give us the access to it, how did He give us the access to it? By enclothing His wisdom and His will in the garment, the physical garment of Torah mitzvah. But in it there is God. God is enclosed in it. Okay. This is like we said in chapter 2. This is like the seed that brings a child to the world. That it's very physical, but in it there is the essence of the parents. And the same is here, that Hashem made this miracle, that in the physical there could be a revelation, could be a vessel for the infinity of God. And also if the king is hugging you with his hand, this is what happened to our mitzvot, even if he's wearing all kinds of clothing, as it said, it says the Torah is like the right hand of Hashem. It's the chesed and water. It's like water that comes down from a high place to a low place. We learned the other day why the Torah is compared to water. Because just like water comes from a high place to a low place, and it's the same exact water, so too, that's what happens in the Torah, that the Torah is on the same level of spirituality, the same level, the Torah, even though it's coming from the highest level and coming down, but it's like water, it didn't lose its quality. It's the same thing that came down. And this is the chesed of Hashem, that He was so generous with us to give us that opportunity to connect with the essence of God. Okay, we're going to go now to the next chapter, Perikei, which will talk about Torah. To understand more, Lashon Tfisa, Shamar Eliyahu. What Eliyahu said, he used the expression of Tfisa. Eliyahu Hanavi says that no thought could grasp Hashem, and he used the word tofes. Tofes means to hold on, which is usually something that you use when you hold on something physical, that you hold it in your hands. But how is he referring to something logical as something that you're tofes, that you are holding on to? So we're going to explain now what is the nature of understanding, and that way we could understand what's so great about the Torah. Hine kol sechel, every intellect, when you are trying to understand with your brain, anything logical, so the first thing is, you're taking that information and you're putting it into your brain. And now whatever you learned is enclosed in the chambers of your brain. Also, your brain is enclosed in the piece of information. In other words, I'm not sure what it's called. It's called there's two parts of the brain. The one is called the
right side and the left side. No.
yeah. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the brain that thinks
Cerebellum
and the
then
remember.
cerebrum.
The part that remembers and the part that analyzes. It's like in the computer also. So you can't analyze too many things at a time. In the computer, you can analyze more than one thing at a time. So when you are trying to understand something, what's happening now is that you are surrounded by the information is surrounded by you. So it's a real unity, because when you are surrounded by that piece of information, that understanding you're trying to understand, because you can't do something else while you're trying to think about it and understand it. I mean, you're surrounded by this. Let's say you're learning a halacha in Torah. You're surrounded by this halacha, by this law that you're trying to understand, and it's also surrounded by you. So that means that if you take that word of Torah, that logic of Torah, and you understand that this is a piece of God, so right now you're surrounded by God, and you are surrounding God within your brain. Derech mashal, for example, if you really grasp halacha in the Mishnah or Gemara, properly, so your brain is surrounding it, and also your brain is enclosed in it. In other words, there's a famous Gemara, the first Psalm of Tehillim, that talks about Torah, and first it says Ubetorat Hashem Yehageh, it talks about the Torah of Hashem, and then later on it says Ubetorato, and in your Torah. So first it's called the Torah of Hashem, and then it calls it your Torah. So the Gemara says depends on which stage of learning. When you start studying and you don't really understand it well, it's the Torah of Hashem. It's not yours yet. But if you understand it in a way that your brain also says that that it makes sense to your brain right now, you understand the logic, and now your brain would also agrees with it, then it becomes part of you. Then it becomes your Torah. So if you reach that level, so the idea of learning is not just knowing it, it's also, knowing it means that it's remembered by you. But understanding it means that it's part of your brain. And this is the amazing thing about Torah, that the tool that Hashem gave us, the brain, has the ability to take something, to process something, and it becomes part of your brain, part of your thinking. Like the Gemara says about Achitophel, that he reached that level that any question you ask him, it's like if you feed the computer all this information, the computer reaches the level that you could ask the computer what to do about this situation. The computer will tell you what to do based on all the information that he processed and it became part of it. So Achitophel reached that level with Torah that when Avshalom asked Achitophel what to do, whatever advice he gave, it's like getting advice from the Torah, because he mastered the Torah on the level that and that's why David the Melech was afraid of Achitophel's advice, because he knew that whatever Achitophel gives the best advice, because the advice is based on Torah, because the Torah became part of him. So when a person masters the Torah on that level, then the Torah becomes part of his brain, part of his essence. And if we understand the Torah is part of Hashem, it means that you reach such a level of unity with God that you cannot achieve with any other mitzvah, with anything in the world. Because when you do a mitzvah, it's more external. If you, let's say, hold on to a love and you're holding with your hands, it's not part of your essence. Even when you eat matzah, which is the eating is much more unity than action, because but it still doesn't become part of your essence, like the brain, which is your very self, your character. And this is the advantage of Torah. And while you're studying, it's even a stronger unity, because you're surrounded by it and you're surrounding it. After, when you go on to do something else, it's surrounded by you. So that's why when you see someone doing a mitzvah, you're supposed to stand up before him. Why? Because right now he's united with God. Once he stops doing the mitzvah, then you don't have to stand up before him. But someone who studied Torah, someone who knows a lot of Torah, you have to stand before them even when they're not studying. Because even when they're not studying, the Torah is still in their brain. They didn't leave their brain after, because they understand it, and they have God part of their brain. And this is why it says that Talmidei Chacham cannot burn in hell, because God is part of their essence. So, So this is the great thing. This chapter of Tanya makes us realize, to appreciate what we are accomplishing when we're studying Torah, which has an advantage over the rest of the mitzvot. Vehina halacha zu hi chokhmato.
Is this one of the reasons we say about men cannot multifunction or do two things at one time?
Right.
Because they're more involved in Torah.
Because you're enclosed in one thing. You can't. Vehina halacha zu hi chokhmato b'retzono shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Halacha is the wisdom of God and the will of God. שעלה ברצונו שכשייתון ראובן כך וכך ודרך משל ושמעון כך וכך יהיה הפסק ביניהם כך וכך. So you could be learning in the Gemara something very physical. Two guys are fighting over a courtyard, over a fence, whether they have to put this fence this side or this side, or whether my axe gored your cow or whatever, all kinds of scenarios like that. And we think, well, how does that connecting us with God? So he says, and especially, so usually when we learn Gemara, we learn Halacha, we think, is it going to be practical for us? So if we learn Halacha in Torah, we're learning what to do. But what if we're learning things that have nothing to do? Like most people go to yeshiva, they're not planning to be a dayan, to be a judge, and they're learning all these halachot that have to do with judging. So, or if you learn Torah, that has to do with korbanot. So, in a way, you think that maybe we should only have the Talmud, practical Talmud, that talks about things that we could do now. That's only if we understand that Torah is only a tool for the mitzvot, to teach us how to do the mitzvot. It's like instruction book. We have to read the instruction book in order to know what to do with our body. This is the most important. So is the Torah just an instruction book? If that's the case, so why are we learning about? So in that case, we could think maybe it's maybe if it's talking about things that are not practical or things that never happen. Even if we're talking about scenarios that never ever happen and will never happen. That there will be such mishpatim, such judgments, such claims, and such back and forth. The Gemara gives so many scenarios and things that will never happen. So maybe I'm wasting my time because it's not going to make any difference in my life. Mikol makom, nevertheless, it doesn't matter. If we know that every line of Gemara is the will and wisdom of God, that is enclosed in something very physical, but in it is enclosed something more spiritual, till the infinity of God. That God desired, and with His will and wisdom, that if Reuven says this and Shimon says this, the verdict will be so and so. So when a person goes ahead and studies it, without thinking, is it going to be practical for me? Is it going to affect my actions? Is it something that I need to know? It's irrelevant. It's not about if you need to know it for your day-to-day life. The very fact that right now you're learning the Torah, you're learning the Talmud, you're learning a concept, you're learning an idea, halacha, that is the will and wisdom of God. You're learning the will of God about this offering and this offering, about Nazir, about Metzorah, about things that we don't have anything to do with today. It doesn't matter. You're learning about the will and wisdom of God in certain scenarios. Right now, you're right now grasping the will and wisdom of God, and you are creating a unity with God. You're bringing yourself to the highest level of intimacy with God. You're having intimacy with God that there is no other way for your thought to grasp Hashem. And grasping over here means like tofes, to hold on to something. And only the brain could really hold on to something, because whatever you understand becomes part of your brain. So it's not possible for anybody, for any creation, to even have a bit of the finite or of Hashem, even the finite revelation of Hashem. Of course, not the infinity of Hashem and the essence of Hashem. And here Hashem is giving us a way to do it, a way to connect with His infinity in an internal way. More than a mitzvah, which is connected with the infinity of Hashem, like a hug, which is more external. The Torah brings us into our brain, into our essence, internally. No one could ever grasp Hashem and not His will and wisdom. The only possibility is through learning the law, the Jewish law, the laws of Hashem in the Torah that are set up before us. And when you're studying, also, not only that it's in your brain, your brain is surrounded by it. It's a great unity that there is no such level of intimacy. There is nothing else like that in the physical world of such a unity that you are united in such a way that it's in you and it's out. It's uniting you from both, from within and from without. Because, like we said, that the Torah, you're surrounding the Torah, and the Torah is surrounding your brain. So the brain process is surrounding the piece of information in both ways. That the information is surrounding your brain is surrounded by information. It's a really unity from every side. So you're really completely immersed in the Torah of Hashem, which is the essence of Hashem. This is the great advantage when a person is studying Torah, knowing Torah and grasping Torah. This is greater than all the mitzvot. Even greater than the mitzvot that have to do with speech, like Kriyat Shema. Even the aspect of Torah, because Torah, we have the mitzvah of learning Torah with our mouth, with our words. It's even greater than that. Because all the mitzvot that person does, whether it's with speech or action, what happens is that the or of Hashem, the glory of Hashem is surrounding you. You're surrounding your neshama from head to toe. But ubidiyat Torah, when you learn Torah, it's both. Besides the fact that your brain is enclosed in the wisdom of Hashem, and you're enclosing yourself in the awe of Hashem, you're also bringing within yourself the wisdom of God. What your brain is grasping, whatever it's able to grasp in the knowledge of Torah, each one according to the level of their brain, and the power of their knowledge, and grasping the pardes in the different parts of Torah. And since that when you learn Torah, the Torah is enclosed within your neshama and within your brain. This is why the Torah is compared to bread. That's why on Shavuot, when we celebrate the Torah, there is a special offering of two breads. One for the oral Torah, one for the written Torah. So why is the Torah compared to bread? Just like physical bread, when you eat it, it sustains your body, and it becomes part of your blood and flesh, and it gives you life, and it sustains you. The same is with the learning and grasping of Torah. When you learn Torah in depth, until you really grasp it with your brain, it unites with you, and becomes one with you. It becomes food to your soul and life from Hashem, which Hashem is enclosed in the Chokhmah and the Torah, which is within your soul. As it says, the Torah is within my stomach. So in the Tehillim it says, your Torah is in my stomach. What does that mean? It's to teach us that Torah is like putting food in my stomach. That when you put food in your stomach, the food digests it, the stomach digests it, and eventually it becomes part of your blood and flesh. And the same with Torah, that when you process the Torah through your brain, it's like digesting food. You're digesting in your brain till it becomes part of your brain, part of you. And you're basically taking the glory, you're taking Hashem within yourself. And that's why it says, that when we learned in Perek Aleph of Tanya, the famous story of Eov complaining to God, you created the wicked, you create people with Yetzer Hara, how could you ever punish them? And Hashem said, well, I gave them an antidote, I gave them the Torah. Because the Torah is the antidote for the Yetzer Hara, for the inclination. and he says the Torah is called Oz, strength. And how does the Torah give you strength? When you learn it. Because the Torah gives you strength more than a mitzvah. Like it says in the Gemara, that Torah protects you from sinning. Why? Because when a person is weak, it's very hard for him to wrestle with somebody else. He needs to be strong. There's a story of this person who wrote a letter to the Rebbe that he has a lot of doubts in God and Judaism, and it's hard for him to start doing a mitzvah. And the Rebbe said to him that what you're writing is like someone who is saying, who is very, very, who doesn't want to eat. He says, I don't want to eat till I understand why this food is going to give me energy, and and it's important for me to eat. So this person will never ever eat, because in order for you to learn and understand why food is good for you, you need to be strong. Because when you're not strong, when you're weak, when you're starving, when you're fasting, your brain doesn't work, and you can never grasp why food is good for you. So you first have to eat to give yourself energy, and then you'll be able to grasp, and then you'll be able to study and grasp why food gives you energy. So he said the same thing with Torah. If a person says, I will first first understand why the mitzvah is good, and then I'll do it, you'll never be able to grasp. Why? Because our physical side is not really a vessel for it. We need our spiritual side to understand and appreciate the mitzvah. And the Torah and mitzvah are actually giving us strength to our neshama. They're like food to our neshama. So when a person doesn't learn Torah and doesn't do mitzvah, his neshama is basically in a state of faint. And he will never be able to appreciate Torah and mitzvah. So you first have to do it. To learn Torah and do mitzvah, then your neshama becomes stronger, then you could start appreciating it. And if this is with Torah and mitzvah in general, but Torah even more than mitzvah. Because mitzvah is more like a garment, more of a external energy. Torah is really giving us the real energy. It's really giving the real energy to the neshama. Without Torah, a person has can't do it. And this is why the men are commanded to learn Torah all the time. Women are commanded to learn Torah in order to know the mitzvot. But men are commanded to learn Torah all the time, because the women have a higher neshama than the men. And therefore they don't need as many mitzvot to keep their connection with God. But men need, unfortunately, they are on a lower level, and they need more strength to stay connected, to stay with their emunah, and to stay connected. And that's why they need to learn the Torah to keep them strong on a regular basis, with not 1 minute, like all the time, to keep their neshama strong, to stay connected. So this is the idea of Torah, that's like bread, that first of all, the advantage of the bread becomes part of you, and it gives you energy. So the Torah, when you study it, first of all, you get the advantage of internalizing God within yourself, within your soul, which you can't do it with any other way, in any other mitzvah besides learning Torah, because it's coming within your brain. And if you understand that Torah is part of God, so you're taking God within yourself. And the advantage is that it brings you tremendous spiritual and positive energy, and it really revives a person spiritually when he studies Torah.
That's good.